Hello, everybody, and welcome to another discussion video for season 2 of Doctor Who. This week we are talking about episode 5, The Story and the Engine. Before we go any further, I just want to point out this week, as opposed to most weeks, we usually leave a few days after the episode has aired before we do these discussions, so that we can get a feel for what everyone's talking about, what everyone else feels about the episode. This week, somebody, Mr. Sean Ferrick, is off gallivanting on the day that we would usually record these discussions. So this week we are going to be recording this, or we are recording this, straight after the episode has dropped. So we haven't really had a chance to get a real feel for what everyone's saying about this episode. So I'm really interested and intrigued to see what the overall response to this episode is. But in this week's discussion, we're a little early.
Yeah, you rat. Yes, as this is airing, I am probably in a different country from where I am sitting right now. It's very Doctor Who themed, though. You know, wibbly wobbly, timey wimey. I am both here talking to you, and I am somewhere else. I identify as a threat. I'm somewhere in the world. But yeah, look, you called it. What an episode, Ellie. These rankings are getting hard.
I know. I still don't know. I don't know where this one's going yet, and we're about to record the ranking, and I still don't know.
No, I know, but for me, it's like yeah. Well, we'll get there. We'll definitely get there. Easily the most engaging episode of the season to date. Like, and it's when I say it's not even close, I don't mean that in any way in a disparaging way against the previous. I mean, you've watched me. Pretty much universally love them. Robot Resolution was your standard season opener, and then it's just been pretty much bangers since then. Whereas this just it's very simple in a way, and so engaging as a story, which absolutely fits the theme of the week, doesn't it? You know, yeah, my green light is flashing, having watched this episode. It was brilliant.
I think a lot of what that comes down to is that the writer of this episode, Inua Ellams, is a Doctor Who fan. So he gets it. He gets what makes a great Doctor Who episode. And you're right, this premise on the surface is a kind of wacky, surface level sci-fi spin. You've got a robot spider that's powered by stories. But actually, when you then dig deeper, there's so many layers to the meaning of what that actually the sentiment of what that is, the power of storytelling. And also, you were mentioning earlier that he'd commented on the moral of the story literally being give credit where credit is due. And there's so many things that below the surface you can take from this episode, whilst also seeing it as this surface level wacky sci-fi thing that is just really clever.
I totally, I love that because, we were reading sort of tease the press releases basically that went out before the episode, and yeah, so because it's so funny because going in, going credit where credit is due, like what could that mean in a story about a barber shop? You know what I mean? And then you watch it like, okay, that makes perfect sense, because so the barber. I mean, where do you start? Like, so we spend most of the episode in this, this front room with barber chairs, and small cast, which I like because then it's always easier to care about everyone in the room when there is less people in the room. There's bait and switching going on. There is definitely, do you think it's gonna be this? Do you think it's gonna be this? I think it's this. Really, really good stuff because I think so. I'm gonna start with this one. I know we both went into this episode going, right, so Anansi is part of the pantheon, the god of stories.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I would have probably been happy with that. You know what I mean? Just like I've enjoyed pretty much every god reveal so far. Anyway, but I was, so they obviously knew that we would be expecting that. So I love how they played with that as well. I suppose technically, now that I think about it, technically they haven't said Anansi isn't part of the Pantheon. It just doesn't factor into this story, whether or
Mm.
not they are.
Yeah, I mean, it's like last week, isn't it? They kind of lead you down a path and then completely switch it up in the middle and
Hmm.
completely play with your expectations. And it is really clever that they kind of anticipated that. Um, I definitely thought, oh, here we go, this is going to be another Pantheon story. But I like that it still fit with the theme of the gods. It was
Hmm.
just kind of exploring a different side of that. So I think that really worked. And also, there were other misdirects in this episode as well. I mean, I don't know about you, but I definitely thought for a while that Abby was Susan.
Now that's funny because I won't lie, I hadn't thought that, but as soon as you said that, I went, oh, that's really interesting because she's so angry
Yeah,
with
I think it's
the
because
doctor. Yeah.
there's a lot of attention towards the fact that the doctor leaves people behind or tells you to wait. And I was like, that's exactly what he said to Susan. Obviously, I think also a big part of that is that last season Susan was such a talked about thing.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't have been surprising if that had been where this story went. And then there was a point where she was holding a device that looked like a sonic screwdriver, and I did think to myself, oh, is she Susan? And I was quite convinced that she was going to be Susan, and obviously she wasn't. Um, but then I suppose we then get the reveal who that she is, Abena, daughter of Anansi. And then along with that, we get this whole story revolving around Joe Martin. What?
I was there, watching the episode, and there is a group chat between myself, yourself, and Danny, and there is a very long expletive written in there because I was very happily surprised. Because I mean they know how to tease us, don't they?
Mm.
At the premiere, you were there.
Yeah, do you know what? I can probably say this now because obviously I wouldn't have said
Oh,
this
surprise!
before.
Oops.
No, but something that happened at the premiere that I haven't spoken about
You
because
walked up to me and
I don't want
said,
to get in
"See you in
trouble.
episode 5." No,
But
you're in episode 4. I'll be in episode 5.
yeah. Um, I was at the premiere and Joe Martin and Russell T Davies were stood right behind me and they took a photo together. And the way they were talking to each other, I did go, because he'd said something to her along the lines of, "Oh, we better take a photo because haven't seen you in ages," or something that made me go, I think she might be in this season. The way they've just spoken to each other definitely suggests that they are playing with us here. I will say I didn't expect it to be this episode. I was thinking more likely to be
It's a
the season
finale.
finale, which isn't to say she isn't going to be in the finale. I don't know. She might be. But also now that this has happened, I'm like, Michelle Gomez was at the premiere. Does that mean she's going to pop up at some point as well?
You're right. Wasn't Adjoa Ando at the premiere as well?
She was. I think what's going to happen is come the reality war. We've had mention of Marvel. The Marvel Cinematic Universe exists in Doctor Who now.
The fact that the Doctor was watching the Marvel movies with Saga.
Yeah, and commenting on Thor's muscles.
They were too
But
small.
but
I spent quite a long time working on them.
it's raised some questions. First of all, if the Doctor is aware of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, then why the hell has there not been a comment made about Unit Tower being like the Avengers Tower?
No, and Joe, I genuinely, I would enjoy someone go, "Oh, we got the idea from Tony Stark" or something like that.
Yeah.
I would find that
more seriously, it does feel like we're kind of building our own Doctor Who Avengers, and the reality war is basically Russell's Endgame.
we had Infinity War. That was the Stolen Earth.
There you go, the Infinity War and the reality war.
Journey's End. That was it. Trying to remember all these episodes. Well, I mean, but I am so I love a crossover done well. And as much as I love Jackie Tyler, why the hell was Jackie Tyler in Journey's End? But anyway, listen, doesn't matter. Loved seeing her there. Like, I'm here for my daughter. You hopped unit. Anyway, listen.
The one thing I would say about the Fugitive Doctor's appearance in this episode is that I was a little bit sad that it was so tiny, and I want more. I'm a little bit. I feel like the Fugitive Doctor has kind of become this cameo Doctor, and appears in lots of episodes very, very briefly, but I want to get into her story. I know Big Finish have kind of started to explore that a bit, but I want to know more, and they keep giving us all these teasers, and I'm like, as long as this pays off at some point, that's going to be fine. But if Jo Martin is just forever going to be popped in every now and then as a brief cameo, and we never get the full picture of what was going on because 13 decided she didn't want to know in the end and just threw that fob watch away, like...
Still in the TARDIS somewhere, yeah. I definitely do hear you, because yes, I want to see more of the future. But I was a fugitive back then. Hey, I do want more. I think we have, in a way, we sort of have like a reverse Paul McGann. Because we got Paul McGann and then it went on hiatus. I'm using that word liberally for 10 or so years, and then we got him back for the 50th. But we did have Big Finish as well. But we got the beginning of his story with Jo Martin. We got little bits here, there, and everywhere, completely out of order, which in a way, if I thought that was always the plan, I'd be like, oh, isn't that really clever? It's very Doctor Who. I suppose you can accidentally land on...
It's like River Song, but there was always an end game for River. There was always a plan from day one. Whereas here, it's kind of like they introduced her and then later on, after the fact, thought, we could keep bringing her back, but they haven't kind of laid the groundwork as well.
If we include the hologram scene in Rogue, she's been in every season since her debut. Like, she was in 12, she was in Flux, she was in last season, it's actually not that many seasons, Seán. It just seems like so much longer because it's been so much time.
It's just nothing majorly substantial.
Yeah, I agree. Because even her appearance in Flux was, again, more teased, that she did so much stuff in the past, and then there was something I was reading recently, and I feel terrible that I don't have it to front. But basically, somebody teasing that she's, because the theory is always that she's pre-Hartnell, right?
Yeah.
And it's gone out of my head, but anyway, something going, yeah, basically this thing seems to be exploring the fact that she's pre-Hartnell.
Actually, that raises a good point that I had when I watched this, because I was under the impression, and I'm sure everyone will prove me wrong in the comments if I'm just talking rubbish, but I was under the impression that the Doctor doesn't remember any events as the Fugitive Doctor. Like, they don't remember... they now remember that she exists because they've met her, but they don't remember the events of when they were the Fugitive Doctor. So then how can 15 recognise and recite the events with Abena so much when the whole point is that 13 didn't open the watch and so doesn't have those memories?
No, that's a fair point. Because it was there in my head, like, is it because, Abena's a god? Maybe this is some way of, working through blocked thing, or like the memories are there. There's just no like direct access. But it's a valid question because of that damn fob watch.
That's what I just was a bit confused. Like, that's where I got confused when it was the Fugitive Doctor who was revealed as the one who had married Abena, because I was like, hang on, but then how can 15 have such good memory of those events? Talking about, I lost a bet, or I won a bet, or whichever way around it was. And that, like, yeah. So there was this whole, this whole recollection of these events, but I was under the impression that the Doctor can't remember the events of when they were the Fugitive Doctor. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm sure someone will tell me I'm wrong, but
if you're wrong, we're both wrong, because I think
okay. Someone else who popped up in this episode that was also massively unexpected, and some people may not have noticed. I'm sure people are, as I say, I haven't seen many people's responses yet. I'm sure someone's pointed this out by now. The child that Belinda spots in the street is none other than Captain Poppy from Space Babies. Did not see that coming. I think I saw Jo Martin coming more than I saw Captain Poppy coming.
That was it. Because, I mean, full disclosure, on first watch, no, I did not immediately think that this was Captain Poppy from Space Babies. And then we had a look at the credits and I went, oh, okay. I wonder, did Russell see the response to Space Babies and go, do you know what? Now I'm going to write a story that makes Space Babies the most important episode, which actually Ellie, if it is now the most important episode, that's the one where they say they're going to go visit Star Trek.
Ooh, I like it.
So actually, yeah, maybe. I don't know, because I don't want anything. I mean, whatever else about the episode, I don't want anything bad to happen to those kids.
No, this is the one. I have no theories. I literally have no idea how Space Babies is going to link to to this. I mean, it presumably there's more to this than just Captain Poppy appearing to Belinda and then disappearing. I'm assuming there's going to be more exploration of this moving forward, because if not, why? But even if so, what is going on?
Like, is it, this was, I was going to say, this was this Doctor's first story. Well, technically, you have to giggle, because we're so used to the Doctor being introduced in the last second of their regeneration story. So it's like, oh, Space Baby's the first episode. No,
no, because hang on, you're skipping the Christmas special. We've got the church on Ruby Road.
Oh, I am skipping the Christmas tree. I don't really like the song. Yeah. Time is weird. Wibbly wobbly. Wibbly wobbly. You've just reminded me there was the mixed response to, she wasn't pointing at me, she was pointing at the street name. I had forgotten for a while, and then it just popped back up again. I was like,
no. Nope.
Anyway, season 2 was great. So I sort of just, I don't know where we're going with Captain Poppy. We have nothing to go on, and only Belinda saw Poppy. So only Donna saw Rose. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? So
I honestly have no idea. But actually, it's good that you mentioned Belinda there. I was a little bit concerned at the beginning of this episode that we weren't going to have much Belinda in this story.
I thought it was going that way as well, yeah.
And I'm really glad that I was wrong. And I actually think that Belinda was used really well in this episode. I think the story that the Doctor tells of Belinda's life, was really great. Last week I kind of criticized that compared to Ruby, we know next to nothing about Belinda as a human. We know nothing about her family, save for a few mentions of her mum and dad. We even in the Robot Revolution, we barely saw her at work. So there's not a lot that we can connect to with this character. Like, who is she? What's she like when she's not running around space? And I think this really, really worked to give us a stronger connection to her character. It also was a clever way of giving her more screen time without her just being at the Doctor's side the whole time.
I thought there was a moment where, where she was in the TARDIS, basically not being able to do anything, and I was like, oh no, like don't just leave her in there. And then the Doctor comes back at the end, everything's fine, haha, and away we go. So
she uses her initiative. She's not just a companion that hides in the TARDIS and goes, I don't know what's going on. She goes, right, show me where the problem is. I'm going to use my initiative and try and go and see what's going on. Why are the alarms going off?
Feels like that meme that was going around for a while of poor Tegan just not having a clue how to operate the TARDIS. And I might be wrong. I think it's from Earthshock or something. Maybe just see where she's struggling. She's hitting all the buttons and nothing's happening. It just became a meme. It was like when I'm trying to turn on 17 programs at the same time and I don't know which button is which and what's plugged in where. It's like, and it's just Tegan freaking out. Yay, Tegan. Sorry, Janet Fielding. You're great. But and it kind of looked like this was riffing on that kind of a joke, the assistant or the companion not knowing how to operate the TARDIS. And the next thing, Belinda's story is critical, and Belinda herself is critical, and Belinda, full circle, is the only one to see Poppy. I like how she's being used a little bit more. Loved Millie Gibson last week, didn't love Ruby's story overall.
Yeah, and I think this episode definitely has kind of solidified the relationship of the Doctor and Belinda. Like we've noted this season, we've had more of those kind of quieter TARDIS scenes to establish that bond a little bit more. And we had that here. We obviously had this great bonding moment between them towards the beginning of the episode. But then later on, we have layers of that relationship where they're almost connected. They start laughing at the exact same time. They're on the same page. They do work really well off of each other, but also can work quite well independently. I mean, Belinda is the reason that Abena changes her mind. She is the one who uses her own wisdom to say, hurt people, hurt people. That's not the doctor saying that. That's Belinda. And I think that's what's better, rather than just kind of being at the doctor's side asking what's going on the whole time and not really having much agency of their own. Belinda has that agency. So I think this episode really kind of solidified that they're a great team.
I agree. I really like the lads in the barbershop.
Mm-hmm.
I really like it. Almost great because like Sully had a hard job to play. It's like he is technically betraying the doctor. He is, one of the. Do you know what? Actually, I thought this was a good example of. So the doctor says, "Oh, I have this massive relationship with this person," and it worked for me. We've never seen Omo before. We haven't seen this established relationship, but the way that both Ncuti and Sule act against each other, I actually do get that familiarity. I do get that they have known each other. And Ncuti's performance, where he's angry, I feel the hurt here.
Mm-hmm.
That was good. Where I love where he's just like, I felt safe here.
Yeah.
That was
actually
good.
It's carry on.
I was going to say, and vice versa. Then I get Omo's motivation. He's like, these are my family. I've got to protect them. I've got to get them out of here. They have families to go home to. Like, I get it. And I believe when he's like, I thought you could handle it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He meant no harm whatsoever.
Yeah. And it's interesting you mentioned the doctor's reaction there, because I think this is Ncuti's best, most well-rounded performance as the doctor so far. We get anger, we get confidence, we get arrogance, we get sarcasm, we get betrayal, we get sadness, we get all of these things that, to me, are the doctor. And we didn't just have the same predictable response in every situation that we've had in previous episodes. We had the whole range of emotions and characteristics of the doctor. And I think this was Ncuti's strongest episode in terms of showing us depth to the doctor, showing us that he can feel betrayed and sad by that betrayal, but also he can have a bit of sarcasm and laugh in the face with arrogance at the villain. The confidence that this is the first episode where I really felt the confidence that, okay, he is gonna save everybody.
Gotcha.
As opposed to sometimes, like in previous episodes, he's kind of, there's been a really high stakes, intense situation, and then he's cried about it. And then I'm like, that's not instilling a lot of confidence that you're going to save everybody here. Whereas if you're in the room and you're laughing in the face of the villain and you're so confident that you're going to stop them, that's what the doctor is to me. I think a lot of that, in fact, this whole episode, shock horror, is down to the music as well. I think Murray Gold has outdone himself this week.
Oh yeah, no, Murray Gold pulled a blinder this week. As he often, and I think I said this on a discussion before, one of the things I'm really enjoying about Murray being back, it's twofold. One is it's inspiring me to go back and listen to all of the music again from previous seasons right the way through. I was just like, in the gym yesterday, I was listening to like all the music of the Doctor and the Ponds. Just love all that. Mm-hmm. But it's also, funnily enough, inspired me to listen to a lot more of Sega Nakanola's music.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I won't say I slept on it, but obviously it's very different. They're different composers, but because I like to see the difference as well. Anyway, good music inspires people to go and listen to good music.
I think for me, one of the big things about the music in this episode is that it kind of really engulfs you within the cultural aspect of the episode. I think the way that the music is different in this episode compared to others because it fits the culture of this story. And I think that also comes down to the set design, the costumes, the makeup, everything about this episode was, it felt very authentic. It really helped draw you into this different culture of this episode. And it's funny you should mention Seán Akinola there, because he did a similar thing with the music for Demons of the Punjab.
Oh my
The
God,
music was
that's
different in that episode as well.
yeah.
It's I think it just really helps to elevate a story when you make those conscious changes to suit the specific story.
Yeah, no, I agree. Do you know one thing I really enjoy as well is when I see something that is quite new or unfamiliar to me. I mean, Ellie, this is going to shock you. I'm a milk bottle white Irishman who has lived in Ireland
Really?
my whole life. You know what I mean? Like, and seeing just representation of other times, other places, other cultures that I did not grow up in. I love this because I know as well, I know Russell had spoken about how previously in the story that became Lux, they were trying to work on something based around Nigeria, based around gods with Ncuti. It wasn't Lux, it was something
It
else.
was the well.
I see you looking at me. I see you
I
looking
was waiting for a moment where you stopped talking so I could correct you.
I was like, oh, no, you got me. But yeah, sorry, the story that became the well, sorry, that they were trying to work on a story that I presume has now become the story and the engine because, you know, we have the story set in Lagos, we have the story that takes in the gods like Anansi, and it's, you know, other gods throughout history as well. There was also, for this, sort of funny, sort of not. Russell T Davies has, you know, in the past, particularly in Torchwood, but in Doctor Who as well, walked out, plopped a platform down, stood up, and screamed, "There is no God," at the screen many, many times, right? And okay, in this one, basically, the Doctor goes, "There are gods, plural."
And I've
Uh,
met them all.
and they're doing their thing.
Yeah.
You know, and there doesn't seem to be any kind of judgment, particularly. Well, okay, and Nancy, you know, gets a little bit of a, you know, oh yeah, kind of bet your daughter, mate. Um, but and it plays on those stories without. I was there was a couple in Torture where it was a bit like, listen, dial it back, Russell. I mean, like you seem like you're like shouting at people as opposed to telling a story. Where that was, I know, sorry, Russell did not write this episode. Inua Ellams wrote this episode. Russell's showrunner, and I thought it was handled with so well here.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, I think one of my favorite parts of this episode was the story about how the braids in the hair of the slaves were used as maps. And I found it really, really interesting. I think the whole scene itself was done really beautifully. And I learned something. And
Yeah,
I like that. I like watching Doctor Who episodes that teach me things, whether it be teaching me about a historical moment, whether it be teaching me a life lesson, or whether it's teaching me about cultures that I am not familiar with because it's not the culture I was raised in. But I'd like to learn new things. I want to be well versed in the world around me, and I think it was handled really, really well. I really loved that scene, and
yeah.
again, the music.
Oh, I mean, 100%. No, I completely agree. I love as well, like, you know, with, you know, it's in the beginning of the episode. Ncuti says, you know, since, you know, now that I'm in this black body, there are places in the world where I am treated differently. You know, this is a safe space, and I thought that was just so beautifully put. Um,
Mm,
and it was kind of not blunt, but it's like, no, we're going to talk about this because I'm very, very, very painfully remember that again, kind of, you know, again, this might shock you, very white Irishman. I have a particular way that I was raised. There was the things I was experiencing, I experienced, and the things I was exposed to, which contributed to, if we go back to last season, me completely not picking up on some of the things in Dot and Bull. You know, because I went in as thinking it was about, I mean, because I did the ups and, you know, mea culpa, I did the ups and downs for that episode, and I was like, oh, it's about social media bad, you know. Well, Seán, you missed the point of that one, didn't you? So coming forward to this episode, um, I feel probably it was a bit clearer for the me's in the audience, but it was just a really, really engaging, wonderful journey.
I like to think in my headcanon that the events that led the Doctor to venture to Lagos in the first place was following the events of Dot and Bubble and finding somewhere where he could feel accepted. That's my headcanon. The events of Dot and Bubble are what led him to try and seek out a place where he could feel completely accepted. And that's when he found Omo. That's what I like to think.
I do not hate this idea. I love the inclusion of the Hemingway story, the six short story. No, because we kind of got our once a season. Here's the Doctors. To say that today, okay, the day that you're watching this, but today, what's happening in the world right now, that they chose that Peter Capaldi scene to include. I mean, Russell T Davies, who, listen, I really like Russell, generally subtle as a brick to the face. And that was, of course, a Stephen Moffat era, but the inclusion of that one, I was only talking about, sorry, tangent. I was talking to someone recently who hadn't watched Doctor, never has. And we were talking about the world, everything that's going on. And I was like, look, if there was one story I could encourage you to watch, it's the Zygon invasion, the Zygon inversion, because of 12's anti-war speech in that. And about how at the end of the day, everyone just has to sit down and talk.
Mm-hmm.
Because that to me feels like a macro theme of Doctor Who overall.
This is what I mean, maybe it's naive of me. I'm not a politician. I'm never going to be able to sit in a room and make that sort of a difference. But every time I see any sort of war, people fighting, people killing people, and usually the people that are doing the shooting and the killing have no say. It's the people above them who are making those decisions for them. And I always just think to myself, why are you letting this happen? Why are you not? The end goal for everything should just be life is sacred. I just don't feel like killing people to prove a point is the right way forward. It's just why?
100%. It's the Doctor never kills unless they have to. I mean, like, it's always the last resort. And if there's ever a time where it's like, the Doctor was a bit quick to kill there, it's usually bad writing.
I mean, that's the theme of this episode.
Yep.
The Barber literally says, in all the stories, you're the man who saves people. And that's exactly what he's doing. And I love the kind of inclusion that by saving the gods, he's not just saving the gods, he's saving the lives of all the people who have built their life around the belief in these gods, the stories that they are told through or about these gods, the life lessons that come from these legends of the gods, and the community that's built around it. I think as I say, it was a very strong episode that you can read into. You can watch it at face value, or you can really dig deep, and that's what's great about Doctor Who, for the most part. So we're just going to butt in here. Hello, past us. This is future us. This is the most confusing video I think we've ever recorded. But if you're watching this, this is past us to you, but future us to us. Because Seán, what did you discover pretty much as soon as we'd recorded the discussion for this episode?
So, tiny bit of context was that I was sitting here. We were talking about the episode. Obviously, we were talking about Inua, who wrote the episode. And in my head, I didn't vocalize this because why would I? In my head, I was going, "Oh no, I was in school with somebody called Inua." Like, yeah. What are the odds? I was in school at the same time as Inua Ellams, who wrote this episode. Because I went and Googled him. Inua Ellams was in my school, which is available online, so I don't know why I'm saying it, for Forest Community College. We only crossed over by 1 year. I knew it. I actually knew this guy. Sorry, depending on when this went out, I sent a message to be like, "Hi, Inua, you might not remember me." Yeah. So I was just like, what are the odds? And I was having a cheeky look at his profile online. I went to his website. I went, yeah, that's him.
How crazy!
Back in, because I was in that school. The crossover was 2001, 2002, and so it was 23 years ago, which is I fully expect he does not remember who I am, which is and yeah, so that was, I mean, then you and Danny got this like running like brain of like, oh my God moment from me the other night where I was like, oh my God, this is, I, I knew, and it was, yeah, like I knew him. So I went on it. I did my studies, and like he's fascinating. He's just absolutely incredible.
And as far as you can recall, I don't know if you would remember, but was he into kind of writing and things as far as you can remember at school?
I'm not going to lie to you. We didn't know each other well enough that I would know at that stage.
Mhm.
I mean, judging by his career, I presume he must have been, because what a career.
This is something else that we probably should have pointed out at the time. Why the hell we didn't notice this in the moment? But obviously, he's most famous as a playwright, and his most famous play is called The Barbershop Chronicles.
Yeah.
And there's obviously a lot of similarities between this play and this episode that we've just seen. And it's interesting because once you kind of have that in your mind, you can kind of see it. You know, it's a very
The fact that it's a play.
theatrical episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a stage play, and actually, in fairness, I was reading now a couple of interviews with him, and he has says when it's one location for the majority of the episode, and then even when it moves around, it's very, you can see this is an episode where we're going to see stage productions of this episode, you know.
Yeah, I think the whole setting of it, the single set for the majority of the runtime, the kind of character interactions. I wouldn't say the staging necessarily, because obviously there's a director who is more involved with how that plays out. But yeah, I think in terms of the complexities of the stories, the relationships of the characters, it very much feels like it comes from a playwright, which it does. But those weren't really things that we'd noticed at the time. But also very, very cool that you have crossed paths with the writer of this episode.
I have begun my process of cyber stalking, as in I reached out to say hello again, with absolutely the very little chance you remember who I am, but that's okay, because I was 13. But yes, people watching this, there was a time when I was not this, in my 30s, handsome man you see before you. But and it's funny, we did speak about, past us, current us that you watch this, did speak about the message of the episode that I don't know, I just want to double down on because I love it, which is, and this is from word to word from Inua himself, it's a call to artists and creatives to always give credit where it's due. And I mean, and that just comes across in waves in this episode.
It's actually a message that's fitting in this time of content creation, and quite often, I mean, you see people's content have so much work put into it, and then it appears by somewhere else where someone else has just taken that and claimed it as their own. And yeah, and I think it goes all the way back to this story of who tells the story of the gods, and this kind of these old stories, but it's also really relevant even today, in the kind of the medium of the content of the art just changes and evolves through time.
Yeah. No, that's good. I like that description. That's good. Yeah.
That's my degree getting put to good use there.
I feel like, it done words good, like,
Anyway,
yeah.
I feel like we should pass back to past us.
Yes, just wanted to make sure that we got there, because, like, yeah, you poor Danny, you woke up to this tirade of like, oh my God, this conversation moment, with a lot more expletives in that as well. But yeah, I just thought, because then what I will say is I text Chris over on Trek Culture, and I said, how long am I with Star Trek? And Doctor Who just pipped us to the post straight away that somebody I was in school with wrote an episode of Doctor Who.
What's that thing they say? You're always like 3 degrees removed from everybody. Is
6 degrees Kevin Bacon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a thing though, isn't it? That you are always connected to everybody in some way.
In fact, you're basically never more than 6 feet away from a spider.
Right, so we are going to hand back over to Past Us, and we will see all of you in the future when this video is posted. And we promise that we will not do a confusing video with all this timey-wiminess ever again.
I make no such promise.
Back to us. Okay, I think the time has come. Oh, this is the hardest week so far.
Well, for
Season
me,
2
it's
ranking.
not hard, but people are going to be like, Seán, because this is my number one. Do you know what I mean? This, which I think I've said in a row every week.
Yeah, I think you actually have.
I will say, I think it's going to be hard to topple this one. And famous last words. Let's see how the next one goes. But I think this is the most engaged I've been with an episode in Ncuti's era.
Mm-hmm. Oh, this is so difficult.
So this is just slotted. So my rankings, similar to last week, this is just slotted in at number one.
I'm still thinking it over, even now, as I'm supposed to be giving my answer. Okay, so I think when I do these rankings, I think I consider other things as well as how great was the episode, were there many downs in the episode, how engaging was it, how was the story. But I also think I take into consideration things like, what was my initial response to the episode? Not after I've sat with an episode and watched it a gazillion times to find Easter eggs or to talk about it in great detail. But when I first watched the episode, what was my reaction to it as well? I haven't had the chance to watch this one as much yet. But I think for that reason, I'm still going to keep The Well at number one, because that was the first episode of this season that I really felt like, we're back. That was the first episode where I really felt like, oh, okay, my faith in the show has been restored. So I think for that reason, The Well stays at number one, but I think I will put the story and the engine then in at number two. Then Lucky Day, then Lux, and then the Robot Revolution. But this is so hard because every single week I am so pleasantly surprised with how good each week the episodes are.
Season 2 is a banger. It's an absolute, I have to say, it feels like, and I know we talked about this before, that they were effectively filmed back to back, and yet it feels like they did not a hard reset, sorry, more of a, right, let's plan this out based on learnings from season 1. It feels like they did that, but knowing that they were both made so close together, I wonder if they wrote something like 16, 17 episodes and just put all the good ones in this season. Damn,
But it is interesting to highlight, though, more episodes this season. In fact, the ones that are in the top 3 so far were not Russell T Davies episodes. And season 1 was mostly Russell T Davies, bar 2, which were in my top 2 from last season as well. And that's not to say I don't enjoy Russell T Davies's writing, but it is interesting that the ones that we seem to think are the strongest are the ones that are written by different writers.
Do you know? Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. I think I do like Russell as a writer. I know that's not what we're saying, because I like things like It's a Sin is fabulous, Years and Years is fabulous. I love that. I do. I like Russell's show running. I like Russell's eras of Doctor Who a lot. And even in that first one, it's the Moffat episodes tend to be the ones that, I kind of gravitate to the most. With obviously other ones as well. I was only The Unicorn and the Wasps, great fun. And I remember when I was only getting into Doctor Who, someone describing Russell T Davies as, oh, this is the Crash Bang Wallop era of Doctor Who. And I went, no, yeah, actually, that's a really good point. So I like that we're in that era without necessarily having to have a Russell script every week. Russell, if you're watching, we're not dumping on you. We like the overall. And that's fine. I mean, like, I'll finish my point, and then it's like, a good boss or a good showrunner surrounds himself with people who know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right. And in the back of my head, I can hear Christopher Eccleston just shouting at me. And I'm not saying he's wrong. We need to do an episode on all of that. We do. We need to do an episode of all of that.
Shall we move on to the Interstellar Song Contest?
Years from now, the rise of Rylan will be studied, and I think it will be a heartwarming story. Because I remember his first audition back at X Factor. I remember that, you know? And it was just like, I think at the time people going like, sure, listen, look at it. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to next week. Looks like we're taking a bit of a left turn after this week.
I think the thing I'm most curious about for this episode is how much of it is going to be musically. Obviously, there's this big divide between people who want to see Doctor Who do a musical. I think The Devil's Chord was perhaps not quite the direction people hoped it would go in terms of being a musical episode. This episode, I'm curious what the balance is going to be. I know that I can't remember her name, the singer who sang the Goblin song,
yes,
in the Church on Ruby Road, will have a song in this episode. Which I'm curious. I'm just curious how much of it is going to revolve around the songs, and then what's the overall Doctor Who story going to be within this episode.
Christina Rotondo.
Thank you very much. Yes, she has a song in this episode. So, yeah, that's what I'm most curious about. The balance of the music side of it mixed in with the Doctor Who story of the episode.
I'm actually, Joe, I'm looking forward to it because it reminds me of things like, you know, Angel Put the Devil and Me back from season.
Oh, banger!
Which is, you're an absolute banger. Song for 10, Neil Hannon.
Yeah.
You know, I miss those kind of things, you know?
So, yeah, I think we can all agree that this week's episode was a very, very strong episode. A very strong episode for Ncuti Gatwa as the Doctor. Obviously, the ups and downs will be out before this video. Again, timey-wimey, bit confusing, but the ups and downs will be... You'll have already seen the ups and downs by the time you're watching this. And the Easter eggs will be out in the coming days as well. So keep your eyes peeled for all of those. And obviously, if you haven't checked out all the coverage of the previous 4 episodes, then make sure you do that as well. But thank you very much for joining us, and we will see you next week. Actually, spoiler alert, you won't be seeing Seán next week. You'll be seeing me and a special guest. So make sure that you tune in next week to see who my special guest will be while Seán's off gallivanting.
Woo! Bit of gallivanting. Yeah. Also, awesome. If you're around Maspalomas, drop me a message.
Bye!
Bye!